Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by OfferingTree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting, especially right now when you are trying to take your offerings online as fast as possible. OfferingTree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. Forget spending all your time and energy just trying to remember what account does what and what your login information is. On top of that, OfferingTree has an embedded scheduling feature, so if you already have a website that you love, you can use it for online payments and scheduling. They have also just announced that they now have Stripe integration so that people from Canada, the UK, Australia, and 30 plus countries can accept payments using OfferingTree. This is something that a lot of people have been asking for, and it is finally live. So that is super exciting. To learn more about what OfferingTree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. OfferingTree has been supporting MBOM for over a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. And OfferingTree is also providing special pricing for MBOM listeners. So be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy and well wherever you are tuning in from today. Today on the podcast, I am super, super excited to have my friend Shannon Crow back on the podcast. Shannon has actually been on MBOM twice before. In the first episode, Shannon and I talked about pelvic health, and then we also talked about her thriving Facebook community for the Connected Yoga Teacher. And then in the last episode that we did, which was back in the fall of 2018, we had a conversation about hands-on assists. And since then, Shannon and I have kept in touch offline. We've had lots of conversations together. We're now in a peer mastermind together, which has been amazing for some peer support. And I am so excited to have her back on the show today, because we are tackling memberships as well as talking more about pelvic health. And so one of the really exciting things that Shannon has worked on since I chatted with her on the show back in the fall of 2018 is that she launched a membership called Pelvic Health Professionals. And this is an amazing membership. I'm in it. There's so much good information in it. I am learning more than I ever knew could exist around the topic of pelvic health. And since I don't personally have a membership, I wanted to really dive in with Shannon about the process of creating one. So we talk on this episode about how she chose the niche, how she chose the software, how she set it up, some of her tips for running a successful membership. We also talk about pelvic health, why it's important for yoga teachers and wellness professionals to learn about, some of the key things that we should be thinking about and watching for with that, and so much more. I am also super excited that as of today, if you are on the wait list for pelvic health professionals, you actually can get access to pelvic health professionals. And then if you're not on the wait list on June 1st, so 1 week from today, her membership will be open to the public. And I am really honored and excited to be an affiliate for the membership. Since I'm in it and I love it, I am able to share it. And if you do decide to use my affiliate link, I do get a little bit of money in return. So if you do want to join the membership, I would love if you could use my affiliate link. And if you want to learn more about the membership, you can head on over to pelvichealthprofessionals.com, or you can go to mbomyoga.com/Shannon, and you can find the link there, and that's got my affiliate link and all that good stuff. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this episode of the show. I hope that you learn a lot. And without further ado, here is Shannon. Shannon, welcome back to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
I am super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fun to be connecting with you again. You and I are in a peer mastermind together. So we actually chat quite a bit these days. But in terms of what people on the podcast have heard from you, you haven't been on my podcast since September 10th, 2018, which is almost a year and a half ago, which is absolutely insane. So for those people who maybe aren't in your Facebook group or aren't following your podcast, can you catch people up on what you've been up to over the last year and a half?
For sure. Do you remember what was that episode about? Was that about
we talked
hands-on?
hands-on assist.
Okay, so that's what I thought. And just so you know, not right after that episode, but shortly after that episode, I went through one of my annual things that I do. I do my own work with niching down and looking at what will come off my plate. And everything I was doing with hands-on assists and teaching that was that thing that year to come off. And then gradually now I'm even to the place where I took away my prenatal yoga teacher training, Mama Nurture. And you've heard that process in our peer mastermind. So I always look at what can I take away so that I can really focus on the work that I'm doing. So the two things that I'm very focused on right now is the work with the connected yoga teacher, the podcast, the group, and now a collective, and also pelvic health professionals. And that's my new membership. And that's where I really get to focus in on what is my specialty yoga. So those two things are really calling out to me with the connected yoga teacher work. I do the podcast. We have a Facebook group. And I work one-on-one with yoga teachers. And I would say I'm still working on what is the work that I do one-on-one with yoga teachers? Like I do lots of work, but what is the work that I really love doing? And I see that I have a gift for it. And I just led a workshop with 6 yoga teachers over the past weekend. We did it on Zoom. We were supposed to do it in person. And I realized in that I have this real ability to help them make a very clear business plan that includes all kinds of things, all the way from starting at niching and really looking at their niche. And by the end, to hear these yoga teachers talk about this is the work that I do and this is who I do it for was very powerful. I was thinking, oh my gosh, if all of these people walk out of here today and do that work, the world is going to be amazing. And then with the pelvic health professionals, that work is really focused on how can I bring yoga teachers together with other professionals like midwives, doulas, PTs, massage therapists, our MDs, our GPs, in a way that serves anyone who's dealing with pelvic health issues. So
Amazing.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. You have so much amazing stuff going on. And I just want to touch on what you were talking about, letting some of this stuff go, because that's definitely not one of my strengths. I'm certainly better at adding stuff to my plate than taking it away. And I think that it is, you doing that with both the niching or your niching course, your assist course, your work that you were doing with Mama Nurture. I mean, that's big work to be able to look at that and say, I love this thing and I have loved this, but right now it's not the thing that I want to focus on. And it's been really cool to be able to see you really focus on the teachers in your group. Your Facebook group is grown so much. I remember we did our first podcast interview on pelvic health and your online community, and your community is just, it's quadrupled in size since we chatted back then. I remember being like, wow, your group is so massive. And now I'm like, wow, it's even bigger. It's so cool to see how much growth has come from that.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm actually wanting to look at next. I was in a workshop where I was looking at my own business, and one of my longtime business coaches, Natalie Ekdahl, was talking to me about Shannon, are you using your Facebook group to network and to connect with people? And I was thinking, yeah, for sure I am. I'm in there answering questions and being helpful and finding resources. And she was like, I need you to take that up a notch. So her and I are actually going to have a conversation, which will probably become a podcast episode that I will share publicly, because I like to do that so that other people can learn how to do the same thing.
Yeah, there's going to be so many good takeaways from that. So I'm really excited to hear that. And that's such a cool opportunity for you to be able to work with her one-on-one and to be on. She's the host of the Biz Chicks podcast, which is an incredible podcast for those of you listening. If you're not listening to it, I definitely recommend giving it a subscribe. I have learned so much from Natalie Ekdahl. So I think it's really cool that you're able to work with her more closely. And something that I really am excited to chat about in today's conversation is your pelvic health professionals membership. When did you create the membership and kind of what inspired you to create that?
So it's almost been a year as we're talking now. I created it in June of 2019. And what really inspired that the most was I led an online yoga for pelvic health training. It was for yoga teachers and anyone else interested in how to teach yoga for pelvic health, kind of the basics of it. It was an 8-hour. I did it live in 2017 online through Zoom. And I have always wanted to update that training. So for 2 years, I was looking at, here's an update. Here's an update. Like almost, I want to say weekly. I was looking at what would I add to the training. And then I realized this is never going to end. Like if I update this training, I will put all of this work into doing it better on video and all of these things, and then it will need updated. That's the way pelvic health and the way that we're learning, the speed that we're learning. Like for example, 10 years ago, we had 5 pelvic health PTs. These are physiotherapists here in Canada that specialize in pelvic health in Ontario. And now we have thousands of them, thanks to pelvic health solutions. And so people are learning at a rapid rate, like how our pelvic health affects so many things and how our life then affects our pelvic health and how this really affects the entire body. So I realize also that I get super excited about this, and not every yoga teacher wants to hear all about pelvic health. But when they do, I wanted a place where they could go and really connect to the information, but then also connect to experts. So last night we had a call. Here's an example. It's a Q&A call. I looked at the questions and I was like, oh, snap. I only know the answer to a couple of these questions. Like these are in-depth, big questions. Well, on the call popped Dr. Sinead Dufour, who actually trains our physiotherapists here in Ontario. And so I don't have to know all of the answers. That's what it means, is like when we create this group of people, we can all really work together so that we get the answers, we get the most up-to-date information, and we can have a discussion and learn from each other. So then the membership was an idea. I looked at membership sites for quite a long time, how that would be put together. I was going to create it just for yoga teachers. And then it was my good friend Barb, who's a yoga teacher, who said, you know what, Shannon, if you put us in this yoga teacher bubble, we will not get the perspectives from, say, like the urologist or the PTs. So let's make sure that it's everyone included. And that was really smart, although that is hard for like looking at it in terms of a marketing and niche aspect. It's harder to market because it's like, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to anyone who wants to learn about pelvic health and is in these industries. I kind of have a list of industries that work with individuals or groups. But in terms of how the membership actually works from a business perspective, this has become one of my biggest income chunks that I didn't expect in the first year. Like I know now that half of my income now, just in the first year, comes from that.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. And I love hearing the backstory with it too, because I actually haven't heard that story. So it's really interesting to hear that. And it's been amazing to watch it grow over the last couple of months as you've been doing these launches for it and getting people into it. And let's dive into the business of memberships a little bit. I want to talk about pelvic health also, but maybe since you just brought up the business, let's dive into that a little bit, because I think that you're touching on something that a lot of yoga teachers are probably, their ears perked up a little bit at like, ooh, half my income, recurring income. Because as business owners and as yoga teachers, for a lot of us, we enter this this world where we're like, we'll have more freedom. We get to do the things that we love, which, for me, I certainly have had that. But part of what came with it that I don't know that I necessarily planned for or expected was this really big inconsistency in my income. I mean, some months I would make lots of money and I would feel like I'm like, oh, I have more money than I've ever had before. And then the next month, I wouldn't have as many projects or gigs or classes to teach. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, so I need to save the money I make on, these really lucrative months and figure out a system for paying myself a little bit better, which is perhaps a whole other business conversation. But in terms of a membership, I mean, it brings in this, this solid income every single month, which I feel like as somebody who works for themselves, that must have been something that you're like, wow, this is amazing to have. Can you kind of tell me about that experience?
For sure. Now, I want to say, first of all, I don't believe at all in like passive income where you sit on a, well, I don't know what it's like to have passive income where you sit on a beach and like money just rolls in. But passive income in terms of you do the same amount of work, like I would be doing the same amount of work whether there were 2 people in the membership or 100 people in the membership, kind of, roughly. Although I did realize when we passed over up to 100 people, I was like, uh-oh. It's a lot different when 30 people have questions as opposed to when 100 people have questions. So there was that learning curve. But it's something when you already are creating some type of content. So for yoga teachers right now, I see this real opportunity of yoga teachers who are recording their online classes now that we're dealing with everything with coronavirus, or who maybe were already, building up a library on YouTube or doing Facebook Lives. At some point, the content that you're putting together, if it was in this really organized way, people would pay for that. And a great example of this is Yoga with Adrienne. So her videos are all on YouTube, but then she also has a membership that you can join. There's kind of member perks and the library is a little more organized. And it's also like Netflix. Like I kept telling myself, I'm going to make this the Netflix of pelvic health, only better. And so the very first thing you have to think about is, what do I want to offer? And you need to really know your audience well to know what it is that they want. So I made a point of talking with a few people who I would see as peers who are teaching yoga for pelvic health, and then also people who I would pull in as guest speakers. One of those was Shelley Prosco, who is amazing in all things pain science, pelvic health. She's a PT and a yoga teacher, and she really combines these well. And I've gotten to know Shelley, and she's fantastic. And she said to me, could you raise the bar right now with this, Shannon? If you get guest speakers, here are some people that I would suggest from our industry of pelvic health experts, but can you pay them? And this was a big light bulb. Like I was like, the membership is nothing right now. So I don't know. Like I would be then paying, and we were talking about $200 Canadian an hour, which is really a nice payment for, like, say, a PT who generally goes around and does workshops for free just to build their business. So if you're a yoga teacher listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do I build my business? PTs have the same struggle. They have to do their marketing. They have to build their business as well. And so that was one piece of it. We wanted to pull in. And when I asked different PTs, like people who I was asking to be guest speakers, people like Shelley Prosco, who would you like to see? Shelley said to me, I'd really like you to get Brene Brown. And I was like, what are you saying? Even having a podcast for 3 years, I don't know what it would take to reach out to Brene Brown and say, hey, come on and talk to us. And she said, like, she kind of set the bar really high for me. Okay, Shannon, see how you do with this, but then imagine if you can pay people $200 and it builds. People never say, oh, I'm busy that day, or no, I'm not talking to you. I shouldn't say, they don't say I'm busy that day, but it's so much different. You know what it's like when you go to book a podcast guest and they're doing it for free. and to get their name out there. But this paying them really changes the dynamic. So we also offer them a membership as well to come into our pelvic health professionals, which just adds to the community. Anyway, you're getting me off into like my dream would be that I could pay these professionals to like really sit in there and, you know, answer Facebook questions or do more in there. And I see that coming. I see it already building. So we have our guest speakers. We have a Facebook group that's private. We have videos. So the original course that I did, I'm still revamping it. That is taking a long time because, as I said, it just keeps updating. But we're working away on it. That's going in there. And then I have short snippets of video and breath that I do that are things that I've learned over the years and things that we learned from our guests. So I said the Facebook, oh yeah, Q&A calls. So we have a monthly Q&A call as well. And those are a lot of components. I would say a yoga teacher thinking, how can I set up a membership? It can be as simple as every month people will get this video or this PDF. Like I knew I wanted to build this pretty big right from the beginning, but it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I appreciate you walking me through that. And I just want to touch on the first thing you said, which is the passive income. And I'm glad you brought that up because I am not a fan of that term at all.
Show me where it is.
Yeah. If somebody like knows how to grow a money tree, just let me know. I'll be there. Amanda McKinney and I have said a couple times, like, you know, we'll pay our way to come visit your money tree and take some of your passive income that's growing in your backyard. Because I think I fell into this trap kind of early on in my yoga teacher journey. I was like, oh, well, teaching classes isn't that lucrative and it's really exhausting. So what else could I do with this yoga teacher business? And I was like, okay, I'll build a course. So I built out my first course and, you know, put it on Udemy. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready for the money to come trickling in. And, you know, it was crickets. I had no audience. Wasn't marketing it. I just put it on the internet, assuming like, oh, somebody will buy this. And, you know, people have bought it, of course, but it isn't, you know, a passive revenue stream in that way. And even with the other courses and programs I have, just like you said, there's always updating, there's always taking feedback, there's always looking at how you can be better, there's always looking at how you can improve it. And so, you know, certainly bringing in regular revenue or, you know, being able to pay yourself the same thing per month can be a really big gift in your business. But I feel like all of that comes with a lot of work for sure.
Yeah. And so one thing I didn't say is the people who took that original training, there were people who were writing to me and saying, can I take the replay? And so I had put it up online for a while, quite a while. And so anyone who had taken an in-person training with me, whether it was pelvic health or prenatal, or if they'd taken the online training with me, those are the people who I said, do you want to be founding members? And there were 50 people that were like, yeah, I'll check it out. And I have to also say, with this, you know, if we call it passive income, like let's call it recurring income. So basically like Netflix, you know, you have that set price and you don't really question that when you go to turn on Netflix. You're just like, I know I pay for it and there it's ready for me. And that's the way I wanted this to be. And that's generally how a good membership will work. With that, you have to know that there will be churn. I haven't shut my Netflix off yet. I feel like I'm really liking it right now during the pandemic, but or all the time, really. But
me too. No judgment.
But this is something that does happen, you know. So when people revisit their budget, or let's say, and I'm super happy when a yoga teacher will write to me and say, I signed up for the membership. I love the stuff you're doing. I'm just not in there. I'm not doing it. And I've realized that pelvic health isn't my niche. I am happy to see them define what their niche is because I know how hard that work can be. I'm not happy to see them leave for obvious reasons, but I know that it's part of the process. So I've been tracking how many people leave each month. Now, if I saw a spike go up and I write to every single person who decides to leave the membership, and I just basically say, hey, I wanted to check in. If this is financial, let me know, especially right now in the pandemic. But if it's not financial and it's not like something just happened with your credit card, let me know and you will not hurt my feelings. I want to make this membership better for everyone. And I get such great emails back. I mean, sometimes I don't hear back from people, and that's fine. A lot of the time it's, I just don't have the time. So I'm actually looking at, okay, how can I support these people to find the time, to make this a priority, or wave goodbye to them in a really nice way if they've decided, no, this just doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point to bring up. And I think it is like, I always come back to my own buying habits and my own kind of habits around those things. And, I can certainly understand, like, every couple months I go through my credit card statements and I see, is there anything I'm not using? And, working for yoga studios as well, we see this all the time where people are like, I haven't used my membership for like 3 months. Like, it just doesn't make sense for me to keep using it. And, we do the same thing, like trying to understand how we can make the studio better and that type of thing. And I think it's great to be able to get that feedback to understand why somebody wasn't using it and why they weren't engaging with it, so that you can, help that next person perhaps understand it. And so some of the things that you've touched on that I've heard so far are, so having a niche can be really helpful when it comes to a membership. So understanding what it is that you're going to offer, knowing what content you're going to creating content every month for people, so that it's kind of got that Netflix idea where, you just go on and there's new shows. And, speaking of Netflix is a great example, especially right now during the pandemic. Netflix is pushing out so much content. I cannot keep up. I could watch Netflix all day, every day, and I would not run out of content on Netflix.
Exactly. I want to come back to what you said at the very start of that, which was this niche. So for our yoga teachers or studios who are looking at, I want to get a membership up. I want to put this video content online or whatever content it is. If you choose a niche, it is going to make it so much easier. So imagine if you're putting your classes together and you say, it's yoga with Amanda, or it's yoga for people who have shoulder pain with Amanda. It just changes the whole dynamic. If someone has shoulder pain, they see it right away. If they don't have shoulder pain, they're going to tell their friend who has shoulder pain, oh, there's a whole yoga channel for this. So I think that our teachers are sometimes not niching down because they want to talk to everyone, and then it ends up hurting their offerings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because, like, sort of the thought that comes to my head, and I'm sure, to other people's heads as well, is like, oh, but what about all those other people that might like my classes who, don't have shoulder pain? And I think it's interesting to think about how, when people understand exactly what you offer, I feel like they can clearly resonate with the offering a little bit better. So, somebody who is a pelvic health professional understands that your membership is for them. Somebody who has shoulder pain understands that, my example membership is for them. But if somebody still is interested in one of us or takes a class with one of us, it's not necessarily that they won't join at some point. Maybe they discover that they are interested in this thing, or they like you enough that, they still want to practice because they get benefit out of the things that you're offering. But the people who are the pelvic health professional and the people with shoulder pain, they won't be able to identify themselves as your client and know to purchase if you haven't niched down. I guess is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that you brought in that other people will find it. I was just talking to a woman the other day, and she said that she and a friend, one of their favorite yoga classes as 50-year-old women was prenatal yoga. They went every single week, and they were like, we would joke because they weren't pregnant at all. The class time worked really well. They loved the teacher, and they loved hanging out with this group of people who were all pregnant. And so we might create a niche and other people will show up, and that's fine. That happens all the time. The issue is that yoga teachers usually think, if I don't niche down, I'll have more students. And it's the opposite. And I know from doing all of my niche work, it is hard to let it go. Like, I remember when I used to speak to yoga teachers and studios, I prefer not to work with yoga studios, actually. I just prefer to work with individual yoga teachers. And it took me some time to realize I can say that and not lose money in my business. I actually increase my income.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting concept. And it is definitely hard work to do because I think there is this fear of missing out in some ways. But, I think it is a lot more effective when you can clearly identify who you target. So I also think too, and I don't have a membership, but I would imagine like when you know who you're speaking to and who is in your membership, it makes it a little bit easier to decide what content to create. I guess I just think about like, if I'm just teaching anyone and I don't specify something, what am I going to create for the next month? I mean, the ideas are endless, but how do you choose which one your people are going to like? Versus if you're like, okay, I have chiropractors, yoga teachers, PTs in here. These are the things that I know they're struggling with. Then I can create my content from that. And I think that's like a really great way to actually serve your people and hopefully slow down the churn because then, coming back to that Netflix example, that's like, somebody goes in there and there's this new content that they feel really excited about.
Yes. And I think that what we don't recognize as often is, let's say for a studio, I know that you work for a couple of really large studios with lots of teachers. Those studios have their own vibe, like their own mix of who is the majority of the students. And then each teacher is able to niche down. Like, let's say you have one teacher who really focuses in on teaching children's yoga, and then there's one who's doing prenatal, another one restorative. And then they can niche even further. And I see those relationships working so well because within a studio, then you can say, oh, yeah, I don't teach children's yoga. Here's Sally over there. Make sure you sign up for her kids' classes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a great point to touch on. And so as you're creating a membership, there's a couple other things that come along with it. There's the choosing of the software and then the choosing of the price. How did you go about choosing the software that you wanted to use to actually host your membership on? And then I'd love it if we could dive into a little bit about pricing because I feel like, memberships range from $5 a month, which is extremely affordable, to $100 a month, maybe even more than that, and everywhere in between, which I feel like actually makes it a lot harder to choose a price because it's like, what do I choose when this range is so large?
So in terms of price, with if you look at something like Netflix, it has lower price points. So here in Canada, it's like around $10 a month that you pay. And you know that you get this massive amount of, online shows that are highly produced. So they're looking at something that they're counting on getting a huge amount of people signing up, and that will make up. So I think you have to really sit down and think, what would this be worth to me if I was a member? And how can I make it, like, this is what I like to think, how make it so that someone's like, oh my gosh, so much value here? Or how can they make that money back? So when I first priced my membership, I was looking at what it would cost just for the course alone, because I knew that it would be in there. And then also to think, okay, and then I'd be adding on this call with an expert that I pay $200 an hour when I talk with PTs. So looking at kind of all of the components of it and then thinking, what's a fair price? Now I'm part of a few memberships, and I see how what works well for my mindset as a consumer is this doors close. So that's another option that you have to look at. Is it open all the time, or do doors close partway through? So I knew that I wanted to have doors open. I'll market and sell it for a couple of weeks, and then doors will close and I won't have to do that work. I can just focus on the content. So I knew it was going to be content heavy. I also pay someone to really organize the information, create show notes. Sinead, her name's Sinead O'Connor. She's not the singer. She does all of the show notes in there. So the very first time I launched it, I sold it for, it was, let me get this straight in my mind. Pretty sure it was either 12 or 15, maybe it was $15 Oh, I'm fuzzy on this. I should have had this ready for you. Anyway, it was around $12 or $15 per month or $120. Oh, I know what it was. It was $15 per month or $120 for a year. So it was basically people could get it for less than $12. And those were those founding members. Those were people who had already, paid me for the course or paid me for an in-person training. And I really wanted to look after them very well. I wanted them to feel like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing deal. And their membership renews at that same price every year. So that's a huge motivator to stay when you see the price go up. So the next time I launched, I can't remember what that was. The last time I launched and opened, it was $25 a month or $250 for the year. And a lot of people do sign up for the year because they're like, wow, I saved those 2 months, $50 off is motivating. And the next time I was going to launch it at $35 a month or $350 because the library has really built up. But because of COVID, I was like, no, I'm going to dial it back to $29 or $290 for the year. And those are all in US dollars. So that's kind of and in terms of then what I decided on for a platform, I was looking at 4. I was looking at Teachable, Thinkific, MemberVault, and Kajabi. And I went with Thinkific because their customer service is amazing. They're a Canadian company. They work really well. They're adding to what they're doing. And I had done my research, I felt like, with all of the platforms.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for walking me through that pricing. I love the idea of having a year-long membership. I know I was a part of Podcasters Paradise for a while, which is a popular podcasting membership. And we also paid like per year. It was nice because we just did the one charge one time a year and then we didn't have to worry about it again. And I know we were definitely on I'm not sure what the word is, but like a lower pricing plan. We'd been grandfathered in on a lower pricing plan, and it made canceling really hard. We did end up canceling the membership just because we felt like we could put the funds towards a different form of development, just because we felt we'd grown past where the membership was at in terms of what it was offering us. And, that's no fault to them. Their target market is newer podcasters. And we just felt like we'd outgrown that. But it certainly was like hard because the amount that we paid per year was very reasonable. We got good benefits out of it. And we're like, if we cancel, we're never going to get this price again. So I think that is a good way to kind of think about it, is like giving people a grandfathered price and giving people that per year option, because I definitely like that. And also being able to just look at like what's happening within the world. I think that it's great that you were able to look at, okay, we're in COVID-19 right now and funds are tight for some people. And there are going to be people who still want to join the membership right now. And I'm sure that they're going to be grateful that they can get it for, $6 less a month than originally planned.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. So I think pricing is it's so individual. I would say get other people to kind of bounce ideas off of around your pricing, look at other memberships and what they offer, but also at the end of the day, make your own decision based on what you're offering, what you think it's worth. And I try and always think, well, how can I make this where someone's like, oh my gosh, I get all of this stuff for this amount of money.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. It's kind of thinking about that, like that Netflix mentality where, Netflix is pumping out so much content right now that I feel like I'm getting way more value than what I'm paying, the $10 a month or whatever. And I think that's what you want your members to feel. You never want them to feel the opposite, where it's like, oh, well, there's not that much to choose from on here. There's not that much for me to consume, or I've watched everything already. So I'll just go ahead and cancel because I've got everything I could out of this. So I think that's a great kind of thing for people to think about. And then I also appreciate you sharing the software. I am familiar with all of those. I'm most familiar with Teachable, although I know Teachable and Thinkific are quite similar. I love that Thinkific's a Canadian company, obviously. And then I'd be curious to know, like, what were some of the, I guess, like selling features for you on Thinkific over some of the other ones?
I liked how Thinkific was pretty quick for their customer service and how I saw that they seemed to be adding new features. Now, it might be the same for Teachable, and I know Right now, if you're a Yoga Alliance member, you actually get a discount on Teachable. So it's not like I'd always tell people, oh, choose Thinkific. Those two are so similar, Teachable and Thinkific. So I'd say one of those is where to start. I did look at Member Vault and I liked that it was more focused on membership, but at the end of the day, I felt like I could still get everything I needed with Thinkific. And Kajabi feels like it's very expensive. It's like for a much bigger platform. I know that's what like someone like Amy Porterfield with all of her online courses, that's what she uses. So I think what it really comes down to though, if you get a good feeling about one of the platforms that you're looking at and other people, you see them using it and you've kind of seen the back end and you like it as a user, I'd say just start and stick with it and don't be shopping around after. Like, don't spend too much time in the research of it because they are pretty similar. I always look for a company though that will say, yeah, we'll add that to our list of things to add next. And I got that vibe from Thinkific. That probably that was the biggest factor.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I'm always looking at like price versus functionality, and Kajabi looks amazing. I've done some research on it, but again, for me as well, it's a little bit out of my price point. And also I think being Canadian is a part of that because our dollar is quite poor compared to the US dollar. And I think it's like 199 US a month. And I was just like, I can't spend like 250 Canadian dollars on a membership portal. It's just not in my budget right now, but something to work towards for sure.
Yeah, I was also looking for a platform that I could put things on, it would build it, and it wouldn't charge me until I started making money. And I think that's super important. Look for something where you're not getting charged the fees until you start bringing in the money for the membership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think especially like when you're starting out, that's super helpful. And it's one of the things that I've always really liked about, Thinkific and Teachable is that they've got those options. So that's really great. And so is there anything else you want to share about kind of the business side of a membership? Is there anything else that you've kind of learned, or if somebody was listening and they were interested in a membership, is there any, little pearls of wisdom you want to leave them with?
I think there is something to be said, like I know I already said it once, but to highlight. So I actually started a second membership, but I'm not calling it a membership because I also realize some people are feeling like, oh, I can't sign up for another membership, which is called the Connected Yoga Teacher Collective. And this one, I just thought, let's try this out. I have this idea. I want teachers to get help with teaching online. Let's put it at $1 for the first month and $19 following that each month, so lower than my other membership. And I'm just going to leave it open. So there's no sense of urgency to join. I'm not heavily marketing it in that 2-week span. And I just see that, it's like I'm not inviting people to the party, if I want to use Amanda McKinney's words in marketing. I'm not inviting them in the same way that I would with pelvic health professionals. I put that on my calendar when the launch is, and I have an entire launch plan. Also, thank you to Amanda McKinney. I definitely don't do all the things that she put in the original launch plan, but I know that I want to send out this many emails and tell people this many times on social media. So I think you need to look at your own behavior of how would I like to market this? And how much can I do ahead of time? Like if you're running a membership, there's a lot of work to be doing. When people cancel, what happens? Can you make it automatic? What if people can't sign in? They can't remember their password. Like there's all of the admin that goes along with it. I like people to be posting questions in our Facebook group and our discussion, but then I need to be really ready to answer, certain days of the week. So I know that I have to put the time in even when I'm not marketing and selling. And that's where we come right full circle. Like it's definitely not passive income, so if you can, and the other tip I'd add is if you can batch your content as much as possible. So I took 2 days and made like 16 videos of short snippets of breath or movement that are focused on pelvic health. And I slowly drip those out into the library. So that's been helpful as well.
Yeah, those are really helpful tips. So thank you for sharing those. And I think it's really interesting how there's these different kind of strategies. And, maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode in a couple months where you can compare and contrast kind of the collective versus public health professionals. And I know they're totally different audiences, different themes, all of that stuff. But just in terms of, having it stay open the whole time, having this strategy of the first month be $1 and then it going to the actual price and versus doing like this launch plan. And I think it's interesting to kind of just think about both from a business perspective because, I think you've said this maybe in different words, but like part of the membership is nurturing your people who are in the membership. And I think you've got to have this balance between constantly selling and constantly marketing and then also creating content and then nurturing these people because ultimately they're the people who are spending the money. And I like the idea of having a launch plan and a launch strategy where, you give your all for a couple weeks in terms of getting new people in. And then the rest of the time can be really focused on the actual membership itself and not the marketing of the membership. Is that kind of how you feel or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do because I know that it takes me, like it pulls me away from creating the content. And that's why, like, that was my original idea with closing the doors. But I realized that from a consumer, when someone sees, oh, wow, I need to make my decision by this date because then I can't join until, maybe 6 months later. That's a huge motivator because that person's like, I got to make my mind up now or I have to wait. And so both sides, it's really relieving for me as the person who can just focus on creating content. But it also, I know that our sales increases like right around the time that it's about to close.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. And so, switching gears a little bit, by the time this episode goes live, your membership will be open. And I would love to talk a little bit about pelvic health in general. So, this is something that I knew virtually nothing about until I met you. And I know we had a really fabulous conversation about pelvic health back in 2017. I think you were like, in my first maybe 50 episodes of MBO, which was really cool to connect with you. And I think you just created the Connected Yoga Teacher and we were just little baby podcasters at that point, and you shared a little bit about pelvic health. And it's been really neat for me as I've been in your membership to learn more about it. But I'd be curious if you can share with listeners kind of, and especially for the yoga teachers listening, like what is pelvic health? And as yoga teachers, why is this important for us? Because it was something that wasn't taught in my teacher trainings. It wasn't something that was even really on my radar until I encountered your stuff. And then I was like, whoa, this impacts me as a woman. This impacts me as a, human, as a yoga teacher. It's impacting my students. Like this is something I need to know more about.
Yeah, basically, I often will say pelvic health is for anyone who has a pelvis. So it's not just about women's health. And I think that does happen that we do hear maybe a little bit more about women's pelvic health. And it also, we know how connected the body is as yoga teachers. So we know that we can work on the fascia in the feet, and it might actually even affect something that's going on in the pelvis or the hip area or maybe even the shoulders. We know that the fascia is very interconnected and the entire body is. When I started to learn about pelvic health, I was amazed at how much I didn't know about it. I mean, I had birthed 3 babies. I had studied anatomy in college. I had studied anatomy in my yoga teacher trainings. And never did we cover the anatomy just of the basic, like here's the pelvic floor muscles and here's how they're put together and here's how that's impacted when you go to move into something. Like let's take boat pose is one of my favorite ones to think about, and so is bridge pose. So if we look just at boat pose, where we're balancing in that V sit, we know that that's a core strengthener. The issue comes in if we look at, can I recruit my deep core? And when I say core, it's like the core 4. So we look at the transversus abdominis muscles wrapping around the side, the multifidi along the back, and then at the bottom is the pelvic floor and the top is the diaphragm. There are, and some people will argue like the psoas is part of that or this or that. And I'd say like, you could technically say, the entire body is part of the core, But we look sort of at those core four, and I love to go in more detail about that. When we look at what happens in that V-sit or anything where we're really, you know what it's like to move into a pose and then you start shaking because it's a lot for the body. We want to come into poses that challenge the body. What we don't want to happen is we don't want, so say for me, if I would move into boat pose, what I didn't know was happening is after the birth of my three babes, along my linea alba, I had diastasis recti. So the tissue along my linea alba in line with my belly button, if I'd come into a V-sit or a plank, something that challenged my core, that tissue at the center of my body wasn't loading properly. And so it was bulging out a little bit. And you can see that in some of your yoga students. You'll see that, especially postnatally, that inner unit, that core might not be able to manage the pressure that's happening. And so we can change it very quickly. We look for sort of four things. One, do I like it? Do I love coming into this boat pose? That would be one to look at. Two is, can I breathe continuously? Because we know that the pelvic floor and the diaphragm move together. So if we can breathe continuously, that's going to help. Three is there doming or that reverse doming at the linea alba? If that's happening, we're actually not managing the pressure. And so the pressure, just like a tube of toothpaste, has to go somewhere. The fourth is there pressure going down to the pelvic floor? And for women, this is super important because we know that 50% of people who have babies have some degree of pelvic organ prolapse after they give birth. Half of our women in our yoga classes are dealing with some degree of pelvic organ prolapse after they have a baby. That's massive. We are not talking about that. A lot of women are walking around, don't even know that they have some degree of pelvic organ prolapse. And so this impacts every single yoga studio and every single yoga teacher, in my opinion. And I was shocked when I learned, oh my gosh, I could be moving people into boat pose who are not managing those pressures well. And it scared me for a while. I was no more boat pose, but that actually wasn't the answer. I wanted to teach people how to do boat pose if they love it, or plank, or whatever, or run, or jump in a way that really used the deep inner core. And so I've learned how to do that in my own practice. And then bridge pose, I learned that mostly we lift into bridge pose on the inhale as yoga teachers. Probably the expansion of the rib cage area, the lungs is what we're thinking about, and this kind of heart opening that bridge pose can be, which is totally fine. But if I'm working with a student that's dealing with pelvic organ prolapse or some kind of a pelvic health issue, maybe even pelvic girdle pain, like persistent, what they would call hip pain, but it's actually not, it's in the pelvis. Then lifting on the exhale can change that pose completely. So it can make it so that they're like, oh my gosh, that changes the pressure system in the body completely. And it's a bit hard to explain, especially on a podcast, but we know that on the inhale, the pelvic floor and the diaphragm move down together. They're best friends and they go down together towards the feet. And on that exhale, they move up towards our head together. And so if we're lifting into a bridge and we're doing it on the inhale, the pelvic floor actually wants to go down. But if we were dealing with something with like pelvic organ prolapse, it would feel so good to go with gravity and to kind of give it the release that it would like. So it made it so that I could really customize yoga for people who are dealing with pelvic health issues. And we know that that's high. Like 1 in 4 women who are talking about it are saying that they're dealing with urinary incontinence. 1 in 9 men, and I actually think it's higher. I think that we don't usually talk about these things. We were told to be shy. And so I like to lead yoga where I'm definitely talking about our pelvic anatomy.
Yeah, I think this is all like so informative, and just I think it's great that you're kind of like breaking down the wall of talking about these things, because anytime I hear stats where it's like, 25% of people are experiencing that, and it's something that, maybe I'm not super familiar with or I haven't heard about, it just makes me feel like, why are we not talking about this more? Like, we should be talking about all these different things that are going on with our bodies. And, there's many, many topics like that we could dive into. But specifically with this, it seems like, there's such a focus on being physically well in 2020 in our world today. There's a lot of conversation around doing exercise. Yoga is very mainstream now. Lots of people are being recommended by doctors to go to yoga. And it's interesting to think about the fact that these people are suffering this stuff in their bodies, and yet a lot of yoga teachers, probably most yoga teachers, aren't really trained to deal with that. As you were talking about boat pose, I already don't teach boat pose a lot for other reasons, but I was like, oh man, like these are things that I don't know as a yoga teacher, and I'm 500 hours certified. I'm not like not experienced, and it's to no fault of the teachers who train me. I think it's just, we have to have more conversations around this. And also I think as yoga teachers, knowing what we don't know, like being able to find out where these gaps are, because if you don't know that this stuff is happening and this exists, how are you supposed to know to go get training on it, or, that this is something you should be watching for, encouraging conversations around. So really appreciative of the conversation that you're starting.
Yeah, I think it's so important and it's so empowering, like to learn how we can use yoga or different movement practices or breath practices in a way to improve our pelvic health and overall health. Like, one example of this is there was a study done where people were shown really stressful images. We sure don't need that right now, but this was a scientific study where they showed really stressful images to a group of women, and the very first muscle in the body that reacted was the pelvic floor. So that's another myth out there, is that like we need to always tighten those pelvic floor muscles. Probably right now, and I know in my own body, I've seen as I've been, watching the news more and sitting more, my pelvic floor is not as happy as it was. So I know that I need to build in those movements and breath practices and even increase them a little bit more. I started doing more yoga classes that worked on the strengthening of my legs. I started doing that online with different yoga teachers around the world, and it makes such a difference. Like, yoga in general will make a big difference for your pelvic health if we look at the restorative side of things, and then add in a teacher who understands like the general concepts of pelvic health. And it's an amazing class then.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as yoga teachers, I guess if we're informed and taught about this, are there ways that we can kind of weave these breath practices and subtle cues and stuff into an all levels class, or is this more like something that is better for working with people one-on-one?
So when I first started to learn about this, I was so afraid to call my class anything that would point it out. I was still really quiet about pelvic health. So I was teaching gentle yoga for hips and shoulders, and I weaved in pelvic health yoga to all that I was doing. Honestly, that's what I realized I had been teaching for years anyway, with a few exceptions. Like, I learned how to really talk about these like things to watch for as we move, and to talk about intra-abdominal pressure and how the diaphragm works, and all of that has been added in. But really, I think it's for any yoga teacher who wants to add this to a group class. Now, what happened is word got around in my own community, and I got hired by 2 PT offices who specialize in pelvic health because they wanted me to work one-on-one or in small groups with people. So it definitely, once I opened it up and was able to say, this is yoga for pelvic health as a group class, that class always filled, and it boosted my business, but I just wasn't ready to say it. So you could do either. You could never say that that's what it was and just have an understanding of it, or you could definitely take it as a niche.
Okay. Amazing. That's good to know, especially, for teachers who are considering getting more educated in this. And in terms of where you start, I know you've got your membership. Is that a good place for people to start if they want to learn about this? Or are there other resources that are a good place to kind of just start your learning journey?
I would say it depends. If you're listening now and the membership is going to open, as I said, I'd jump in there and take in all of the stuff. If you're listening when the membership isn't open or you want to get a feel for what it's like, we have a resources tab on pelvichealthprofessionals.com. And there's all kinds of free articles that you can look at. You can also share with your yoga students and podcasts that are very specific. Like, for example, we did an episode with Dr. Susie Gronsky on male pelvic health, which that's not my specialty. And so we pull in experts from other places. Shelley Prosco is on there. We have just a massive amount of podcast episodes that are for specific pelvic health issues.
Okay, amazing. I love that. And I guess another question that I'm curious about. So I guess as like a human being with a pelvis, what kind of like signs or symptoms would you be looking for in terms of knowing, where your pelvic health is at? And then also like as a teacher, are there certain things to look for within your students as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as a person with a pelvis, it's really important to know that if we are experiencing pelvic girdle pain, meaning any pain in the pelvis or any pain during intercourse, that's not normal. I've heard people going to the doctor and they're just like, yeah, that comes with aging or childbirth or whatever, or, you just need to relax before you have sex. That is such a huge myth that I'd like to just wipe out. We would never say that about some other part of the body. Like we would never say that with knee pain. I mean, yes, we do say, oh, that's arthritis, that's aging. But I think that's so false, even if we were looking at our knees. So Dr. Sinead DeFord just talked to us last night about how basically if we're experiencing pain after 16 weeks, so let's say we just do something, a little funky dance move, and we're like, oh, I kind of pinched something there, and it might have done some damage to the tissue. 16 weeks later, that tissue has healed. And if that pain persists, there's a reason for it. And it's usually not something with the tissues and something mechanical. It's something else. And so that's super empowering. So no amount of pain is like, oh, this is normal. Just live with it. That's a big message. It is not normal to pee your pants, whether you're a man or a woman at any age. If you've just recently had a baby, you might be leaking a bit of urine just following, but after that, like the tissues should heal. And we also have this myth out there like, oh, I'm getting older, it's menopause time, and so it's normal to leak if I'm laughing, coughing, sneezing, jumping. It's not normal. It's so common though, so that we normalize it in society. I know people who have gone to see a PT. They've been leaking urine for 20 years. They've put up with this for so long, and then they find that they can actually not have that happen at all. And they've just been sad that they sort of wasted this 20 years. So I would say for sure, like if you have any thought that something's going on, pelvic area, sign up for an appointment with your pelvic health PT. I know they're doing virtual appointments right now. Know that it isn't normal. Like do your research. Painful periods is another one that is not normal. And I just find it fascinating that, we go to our dentist, we get our teeth checked, and that person specializes, and we don't even blink at thinking, of course I'll go see my dentist. I'm not going to ask my doctor about a pelvic health issue or a tooth issue, but we ask our doctors about pelvic health issues, and they don't specialize in it. Even gynecologists don't special to the level of pelvic health PTs at this point. Midwives don't even get this training. PTs in general, our physiotherapists, don't learn about pelvic health at all until they take this specialized training. So hopefully it is changing. But I think it's important to see if you can connect with a pelvic health expert for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you listed so many things there, and there's definitely things in there that I've heard to be true. Like, I think one of the things that's kind of always frustrates me about the idea of aging is when people who are, older than me, much older than me, are like, oh, well, you just have this to look forward to when you're older. And I'm like, no, I'm doing my maintenance now so that I can, be hopefully minimize pain and all these types of things as I age. And I think the same goes for that, like understanding that, leaking urine and having this type of pain is something that we can talk about and we can take care of. And I think it's important at any age to be learning about this type of stuff and considering that. And then within a yoga context, like, is this stuff that you would be able to see in your students? Or is this more like you could start cueing it a little bit, your students would really feel the difference, and then maybe that opens the door for the conversation later?
That's a good question. I would look for, are they breathing continuously, or do you see them holding their breath? Do you see that doming or reverse doming at the linea alba? But obviously we can't tell what's happening. Like, are they putting a ton of pressure down onto pelvic floor? Maybe if they were really gripping and pushing it, we could see that. But no, people are really good at hiding these things, right? If we think about a painful period, are we going to go and tell our yoga teacher? Probably not, because we probably got told, like, the average diagnosis for someone with endometriosis is 11 years. So we probably were told, oh, this is just a thing that women deal with. And our mothers usually had it. So they were also told the same. We're in a society where that's what we're told, like, suck it up because you're a woman, that's what's going to happen. So we don't tell our yoga teachers, like, I'm peeing my pants, or I have fecal incontinence, or, I'm having pain during sex. So this is why now, not every yoga teacher has to do that, but I love to talk about it because it was the very first class where I started talking about urinary incontinence, because I was learning about it and I was learning how yoga could help. There was a study done on that. And then there are also some tips and tricks that I was learning as I went. I did the talk and I had some cards for a local PT who could help people who were dealing with urinary incontinence pass that. And over half the class came up and took a card. And I was like, oh my gosh. Nobody had to say anything to me. I just realized how much was going on and people weren't talking about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you handle that too, in a way that people can like comfortably go, get the resources without having to talk about it. Cause I think for some people, there's like a certain level of like shame around that. I'm sure, especially around like urinary incontinence, like the idea of being, fully grown and being older and leaking urine is not something that we're going to, just walk around and tell everyone, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that talking about that stuff and being more comfortable to talk about that and, heavy periods or period pain, that's stuff that we should be more comfortable talking about. But I also get that it's, not something that you're just going to publicize to somebody if you don't know them. So I think that's a really great way to kind of bring that in. And I think this is just more and more, every time I talk to you about this, it just reminds me of how important this topic is. And I'm so grateful that you've, created this resource for professionals, for yoga teachers. And so I'm curious if you can tell people a little bit more about the membership, when it's opening up, how they can get involved if they're interested in that, and just what they can expect out of that if there's anything that we haven't talked about yet.
Sure. So for anyone on the wait list, it always opens a little bit earlier. That allows me to work at the kinks. And I feel like if people have been on the wait list, they should be able to get in there a little bit sooner. So I don't know when this episode goes out, but for everyone else, it's opening June the 1st of 2020. And I always have a rough plan, like when would it open again? It might open again in the fall of 2020, but I'll just wait and see how things go as well. And so June the 1st, and it'll be open for a couple of weeks. Then doors will close. Once people are in there, they can access everything. For a while, I was thinking about, let's do drip content where they can only see these certain things, but everyone wants something different in there. Like some people gravitate right towards our guest speaker calls. Others really want to show up for the live Q&As. Other people are like, no, I want all the snippets of movement and breath. So they can access everything basically right away as soon as doors open. And then we've tweaked a few things. Like we now have a question form. So all of the questions are super organized.
Amazing. And so if people want to get on the wait list, they can go to pelvichealthprofessionals.com, correct?
That's right.
Amazing. And then I will also put a link in the show notes as well. I'm actually an affiliate for the membership. I'm in it. I've learned a ton from it. It's such an awesome resource. And so Shannon has gracefully given me an affiliate link. So if you guys want to register or learn more, I would love it if you could use my link. So I will put it in the outro of this episode and then also put it in the show notes. Shannon, thank you so much for this conversation today. As always, it's a pleasure to chat with you. And if people want to learn more about you and your podcast, or maybe join your Facebook community or the collective, where can they go to find all of that stuff?
So if they're interested in the podcast, it's theconnectedyogateacher.com, and the collective is there as well. And then everything pelvic health is pelvichealthprofessionals.com. And I just want to say a huge thanks for being an affiliate. And I would tell all of your listeners, like, make sure to use Amanda's link. This is my way of, when people are already talking about something like the membership, it's my way of being able to pay them something from that. So you don't pay any more as a member, but it enables me to support the community that is sharing the information, which I think is so cool. And people will sometimes reach out and say, oh, I meant to sign up. Like, make sure to use Amanda's link so that she gets a little kickback. That's the nice thing that you can do when people are saying, how can I support the podcast or the work that you do? And so, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation. And I'm so excited to share all of this information with listeners.
Thank you.
All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Shannon Crow from The Connected Yoga Teacher and Pelvic Health Professionals. It's always so fun for me to chat with Shannon. She's just a wealth of knowledge, and she has created such an amazing business. Just a quick reminder that Pelvic Health Professionals will be open to the public from June 1st to June 12th, and it will be open to the waitlist as of today. So if you are on the wait list or you want to get on the wait list, you can definitely do that. And once again, just a reminder to check out the affiliate link, which you can find at mbiomyoga.com/Shannon. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the show, and I will see you next week. Namaste.